Hotel rooms are supposed to be a temporary escape, a place to relax and unwind. We eagerly look forward to our vacation days. But hey, what if the room was waiting for you too, watching you carefully till you go insane? If you're one of the lucky people, you wouldn't end up in room 1408, cause let's just say you don't come back in one piece. Consider it as one of the most terrifying locations in Stephen King's universe. Unlike a lot of films from that decade, which were into slasher films, supernatural horror, or a possessed evil soul, room 1408 proved to be a fresh take on the whole psychological horror bandwagon, cause once you step inside, you're already lost. But why? What makes room 1408 so terrifying? Is it cursed? Possessed? If there's something really lurking behind those walls, we're about to find out. So let's take a closer look at the twisted history of room 1408 and discover why you should never try paranormal hunting as an amateur. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The dark history of room 1408. Before room 1408 became a legend of terror, it was just another part of the Dolphin Hotel in New York City. Built in 1912, the hotel was designed to be a symbol of luxury and comfort for the wealthy and powerful. But something about this particular room twisted reality itself. Over 95 years, a staggering 56 people met their end in room 1408. All deaths were either considered suicide or ruled out as natural causes, and boy, were they gruesome. There were a total of 7 jumpers, 4 overdoses, 5 hangings, 3 mutilations, 2 stranglings, a heart attack, a stroke, and even a strange drowning incident. One man, Grady Miller, died with his face submerged in a bowl of soup. Another, David Hyde, was an orthodontist who slit his wrists and cut off his own genitals. People couldn't simply rule these out as suicides. They looked like acts of pure madness. A room that watches and waits. The room didn't need to physically harm anyone, cause the victims did the job themselves. The hotel's manager, Gerald Olin, was well aware of the room's sinister nature. He even spent years keeping it vacant. The entire hotel staff was told to avoid it. In fact, they made a point never to enter the place alone, and if they had to, the rule was always to keep the door open. But despite Olin's best efforts, some people felt compelled enough to challenge the room's legend. One of those skeptics was Mike Enslin, a writer who built his career debunking haunted locations. We understand it was his job to go there in search of his next overhyped ghost story or whatever, but Mike may not be the man you think he is. He has many layers to him. You see, he himself doesn't believe in the subject of ghosts or their existence, so he feels comfortable enough to venture into such spaces, but he also secretly wishes for them to be true, because if they are, there is a chance he can talk to the dear person he lost. Grief does make you do crazy things. Mike ignored Olin's warnings and brushed off the horrific deaths. He checked into the hotel, not realizing the mistake he was making. The room's psychological warfare. Stephen King's original story and the film adaptation make it clear that there are no ghosts in room 1408. The evil here is inhuman, something far beyond the understanding of both the characters and us as viewers or readers. Take the case of a young maid from El Salvador, who once entered the room for housekeeping. When they finally found her, she was alive, but had gouged her own eyes out with a pair of scissors for some reason. That's not an act of panic. That's prolonged exposure to something that slowly dismantled her sanity. This isn't the type of room that reacts when you walk in. It waits. It knows you. It remembers things you've buried deep in your mind. Then it plays them back like a sick joke. The Mike Enslin Incident. Mike has written several books so far, like the 10 Haunted Graveyards and 10 Haunted Hotels, but deep down he believes he's a charlatan who's taking advantage of people's superstitious beliefs. So when Mike Enslin gets a mysterious postcard warning him about room 1408 at the Dolphin Hotel, his interest is piqued. The hotel's manager drops him at the elevator door because he doesn't even want to enter the same floor as the room. He even warns Mike that nobody has lasted more than an hour in that place. But despite all the warnings, Mike bravely heads there. The clock starts a 1-hour countdown, and the psychological assault begins. The thermostat spikes, the room chills, the walls bleed, the paintings change. The phone rings and a robotic voice repeats phrases back to him, telling him that it knows far more about his life than it should. Then, the room begins to distort time and space. What seems like seconds stretch into agonizing hours, and what should be stable and solid becomes dreamlike and twisted. Trippy, right? When Mike attempts to document his experience with a mini cassette recorder, he finds that the room has the power to corrupt physical evidence. His voice is either garbled or erased entirely. Even the attempts to escape quickly fail. The door vanishes. The windows break themselves over, and calling for help only connects him to the room itself. He even tries to swing between windows to an adjacent room, only to find that he's stuck in a looping dimension. Every room is 1408, and the hotel corridor stretches into infinity. He sees hallucinations of past victims, phantom screams, and flashes of people dying in horrific ways. But none of that compares to how it targets Enslyn's trauma. The room shows him hallucinations of his dead daughter, Katie. The horror doesn't stop there. Mike suddenly wakes up on a beach, as if the whole experience in 1408 was a vivid nightmare. He reunites with his estranged wife, Lily, starts writing again, and even begins healing emotionally. But this peace is brutally shattered when he receives a postcard and visits a post office. The walls begin to collapse, and he finds himself once again back in room 1408. Everything that came after the room flooded. His escape, his reconciliation, the healing, it was all for nothing, but a false memory planted by the room. Perhaps one of the most chilling moments in the film is when Enslin receives a phone call from the room itself, using the hotel operator's voice to let him know that he can relive his trauma. That's when he realizes this isn't a haunted room, it's a predator, and he's the prey. The countdown clock starts again to make it clear that there is no escape now. The room intends to break him over and over in an endless loop of suffering, which will only end at his death.
What do you want from me?
The room's powers. Time inside room 1408 becomes elastic. For instance, when Mike experiences a complete timeline where he escapes the room, it feels like a redemptive arc is starting. But this is 1408. Nothing is real. Just as Mike begins to accept his recovery and opens the package in the mail, sand starts pouring out of it. It highlights the room's true power of manufacturing reality, and then taking it away. Physical escape is another cruel illusion the room uses to toy with its victims. Mike tries everything from calling for help, breaking windows, to attempting to climb across ledges, but the room responds with malicious creativity. The physical laws of the universe simply don't apply here. What truly sets it apart, though, is how it invades painful memories. This isn't limited to physical recordings either. The room forces Mike to relive the parts about his father, his career failures, his marital breakdown, and most devastatingly, the death of his daughter. When Katie appears alive in the room, she hugs her dad and tells him she loves him. Just as Mike begins to believe it, she dies in his arms again, vanishing into ash. The room loves isolating its victims, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, till you are left with nothing but your worst self. We would like to call this film more of a psychic autopsy, rather than just a ghost story.
Get him out of here!
Destruction of the room. Eventually, Enslin realizes that physical force won't work. What breaks the illusion is a discovery that the room can't interfere with people outside of it. That is his only loophole. He crafts a Molotov cocktail out of a bottle of alcohol given to him by Olin and sets the room on fire. The plan works. Firefighters break down the door and rescue him before the room can retaliate. In doing this, he becomes the first person to survive room 1408 without any major physical damage. Enslin is left mentally and emotionally broken though. He quits writing, isolates himself, removes all the phones from his home, and can't bear the color of the sunset. It shows that room 1408 didn't successfully kill him, but it didn't let him go unscathed either.
If I'm going down, I'm taking you with.
One room, many fates. The film gives us multiple possible endings, thereby casting the story's conclusion in a different light. Much like Stephen King himself, the director wanted to leave audiences with an ambiguous closure. Let's walk through them.
Together. You, me, and Mommy.
The theatrical ending. This is the version most audiences saw in theaters and DVD releases. After Mike's brief survival, he decides to patch things up with his estranged wife, Lily. The physical room has been gutted, his power presumably destroyed, but the psychological trauma remains there long after he's left. While going through Mike's belongings, Lily finds a tape recorder and she plays it to find their deceased daughter's voice on it. Lily didn't really believe him at first, but now, even she is left stunned with his revelation. The ending is bittersweet because there's some emotional closure, but it comes with heavy implications. The director's cut ending. Then of course there was the director's cut, in which Mike dies from his injuries after destroying the room. The film continues past his death to a funeral scene, where Gerald Olin tries to return Mike's belongings to Lily, which she refuses. Olin later listens to the tape recorder in his car and hears Katie's voice and sees a ghostly image of Katie wandering in the cemetery, and then the charred apparition of Mike in his rearview mirror. Finally, we get a glimpse of room 1408 again. It's burnt and abandoned, but Mike's spirit briefly appears there, watching over the city below. As he hears Katie calling his name, he walks off into the darkness, and the room's door slams shut one final time. This ending leans into a more spiritual finality. Mike dies, but by confronting the evil in 1408, he prevents the room from claiming more lives. The second alternate ending. In this version, Mike still dies, but instead of a funeral or ghostly closure, we focus on Sam, his publisher, who later discovers a manuscript Mike wrote about his stay in room 1408. As Sam reads it, the door slams shut around him. Then, a final ominous message from Mike's father echoes, "As I was, you are. As I am, you will be." This version doesn't end with some triumph or healing. It ends with a cycle, implying that the room's evil is eternal. So those who come close to it, whether they survive or merely read about it, may find themselves cursed in turn. The third alternate ending. In this one, Mike survives and moves to Los Angeles with Lily, and their life appears to resume some level of normalcy, but there's still a quiet tension in the air. At home, they listen to the tape from 1408, and again, Katie's voice is heard. Lily is stunned, and Mike simply looks at her, saying nothing. It's subtle, but his expression and the tone of the scene suggest that the room didn't end when it burned. Something followed him out. This version lives in ambiguity. There's no victory, just a quiet sense of dread. Stephen King's original ending. In King's version, Mike Enslin also survives his stay in 1408, but the room leaves him utterly broken. There's no fire, and certainly no cassette tapes capturing his daughter's voice, but the story ends with a very Kafka-like malaise. Enslin is a changed man. He doesn't write anymore. He sleeps with the lights on. He's removed every phone from his home. He draws the curtains before sunset. He is afraid of the color orange because it reminds him of the light inside room 1408. Most significantly, he reflects that there were no ghosts in 1408 because ghosts were once human. The room was simply an inhuman evil that's raw and unknowable, and he knows it's still out there. Basically, it's just trauma etched into Mike's body and mind like a scar that will never heal. Kafka would be proud. King's inspiration. It's interesting to know that Stephen King wrote the first few pages of 1408 as a writing exercise for his nonfiction book on writing. This story was never intended to see the light of day, but the eerie tone caught his interest. He described it as his take on the classic ghostly room at the inn trope. He also designed the number 1408 intentionally. The digits add up to 13, which is a number long associated with bad luck. That theme recurs throughout. For instance, 1 plus 4 plus 0 plus 8 equals 13. Mike is the 58th victim. 5 plus 8 equals 13. The room is on the 13th floor, although labeled as the 14th due to hotel superstitions. There are many real-life accounts of cursed hotel rooms that likely served as vague inspiration for this. King often stays in hotels while on book tours, and has admitted to feeling a chill in some rooms, almost like a presence watching him. At its core, it's a deeply Kafkaesque descent into psychological and existential dread. While most people recognize King for his ghosts, monsters, and blood, 1408 stands out as a story where the true horror lies in the absurd. Franz Kafka's works often place characters in situations that are bizarre and somewhat illogical. Think about the protagonist from The Trial, who is arrested for a crime that's never explained, or The Metamorphosis, where a man is turned into a giant insect and no one reacts with the kind of alarm you'd expect. The world continues to be a cold, indifferent place, like it could have cared less about your problems. Mike even sees a vision of himself lying dead in bed while the room continues without a care. Like Kafka's protagonists, Mike becomes a man forgotten by the world, trapped in a system he can't fight or understand. The element of stripping him of agency is incredibly Kafkaesque. Another key theme at play is the futility of logic in a surreal world. Mike is a rational thinker who walks into the room fully believing he can document and debunk whatever happens. But logic fails him. And finally, like in many Kafka stories, the punishment doesn't always match the crime or even exist for a reason. Mike didn't deserve what happened to him. He wasn't evil. He was curious, maybe arrogant, but not malicious. But the room didn't spare him for that. Now, let's come to the million-dollar question. Why is this room haunted? Well, we don't know the exact reason, but isn't that what makes it so terrifying? There are a few fan theories running around that try to fill the gap. Some fans speculated that the room could be a feeding ground for an interdimensional being, like something out of the mist. Others think it's a nexus of bad energy, like a supernatural hotspot that amplifies despair. There's even a theory that a previous hotel manager knowingly allowed the room to operate so it could feed guests to keep the hotel running smoothly. Because when you step back and connect the dots, this theory starts to look less like wild speculation and a lot more like sinister logic hiding in plain sight. In the movie, Olin tells Mike Enslin that he has kept the room closed for over 20 years. Olin clearly knew how dangerous the room was, but why wasn't that always the case? If he could figure it out, wouldn't his predecessors figure it out too? Well, maybe they did, and maybe they liked it that way. Let's look at the numbers. 56 deaths over 95 years, including 12 suicides and at least 30 natural or accidental deaths. That averages out to a death in 1408 about every 1.7 years, and that's just what we know. Some might have been hushed up and brushed under the carpet. If you remember the file Olin hands to Enslin in the film, you know that it looks pretty detailed and clearly locked away for a reason. It reads more like a collection of cover-ups than a guest history log. And let's not forget how secretive the hotel already is. Even in modern times, Olin avoids publicity by never talking to the press. So, how possible is this theory? Honestly, very. In a supernatural setting where evil has rules and hungers like Pennywise in It or the Overlook Hotel in The Shining, there's always someone who enables it. Someone who turns a blind eye in exchange for order or control. Room 1408 doesn't really care how it gets its victims either. In fact, this idea adds another layer to Olin's character. Maybe he was the first manager with a conscience, and that's why he locks the room. That's why he practically begs Enslin not to go in. It's never explicitly confirmed, but man, that silence says a lot. And it makes you wonder just how many other rooms in other hotels have their own secrets locked away. Marvelous verdict. And that's the creepy legacy of Room 1408. Whether it's the story's eerie vibes or the movie's twisty endings, it's one of those, wait, what even happened kind of rides. And you know it's a good one when you're still trying to figure it out afterward. Stephen King basically turned wallpaper and hotel sheets into a psychological war zone. So, if you ever get a postcard from the Dolphin Hotel, maybe just chuck it. Ever had a weird or spooky hotel experience? Drop it in the comments below. And if you like this deep dive, give us a like and hit that subscribe button for more horror breakdowns. Catch you in the next one. Stay safe.